Hello and welcome. Today, we're going to build a strategic framework for how to think about cyber threats. Now, we're not going to get bogged down in the technical weeds of code or servers. Instead, we're going to approach this as a leadership and governance challenge, which is absolutely essential for anyone studying policy or management in our digital world. All right, let's jump right in. So, let's start with a little riddle. What do your CEO and a fraudulent invoice have in common? Well, the answer is that they can both be convincingly faked. And that question really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. See, the modern cyber threat landscape is often less about some brilliant, complex hack and way more about exploiting a vulnerability that's as old as time itself: human trust. To make sense of this all, here's our roadmap. First, we'll build a mental model for how to categorize these threats. Then, we're going to walk through attacks that target people, then digital systems, and then the entire ecosystem we all rely on. And finally, we'll connect the dots from the threat itself to the real-world impact. Look, to manage risk effectively, leaders just can't afford to react to every single scary headline. You've got to have a mental model, right? A way to sort and prioritize the non-stop stream of threat information. And that is exactly what this framework is designed to do. So, here they are, the 5 big buckets we're going to use to sort all this out. We've got threats that are people-focused, access-focused, system-focused, ecosystem-focused, and finally, disruption-focused. Just thinking in these categories helps turn a really chaotic topic into a strategic challenge you can actually manage. So let's start with the absolute most common entry point, the human layer. These are the kinds of attacks that don't bother trying to break down a digital wall, not when they can just convince someone on the inside to open the door for them. And the classic example here is, of course, phishing and social engineering. I'm sure we've all seen them, those emails or texts designed to make you feel a sense of urgency or maybe curiosity. The goal is just pure manipulation. And it doesn't matter if it's a generic email blast sent to thousands or a super targeted spear phishing attack aimed at one specific person. The principle is exactly the same: exploit human psychology. Now check this out. This is a breakdown of a really common attack called business email compromise, or BEC. The process is actually shockingly simple. First, an attacker pretends to be a senior executive or a vendor you work with all the time. Step 2, they create some urgent reason. This has to be paid today. Then comes the trick. They ask for a tiny, last-minute change, like updating a bank account number. And just like that, before anyone even realizes what happened, the money's gone. So for anyone studying governance, this is the key insight. When human behavior is the target, you can't just throw technology at the problem. The best defenses, the most effective policies, involve training your people, having strict verification processes, like, a mandatory phone call to confirm any change in payment details, and most importantly, building a culture where it's not just okay, but encouraged to pause and ask, wait a minute, does this seem right? And that leads us right into access-focused threats, with credential theft sitting at the top of the list. Stealing a username and password, that's like stealing the keys to the entire kingdom. It's very often just the first step, that initial foothold an attacker needs to then launch a much bigger, much more damaging attack later on. Okay, so we've talked about people. Now let's shift gears and look at attacks that go after the technology itself, the software, the hardware, and the networks that make our organizations run. And right at the forefront of this is ransomware. But this isn't just about locking up your files anymore. The modern tactic is something called double extortion. It's a nasty evolution. First, the attackers sneak in and steal a copy of your most sensitive data. Then, they encrypt all your systems. So now they have 2 ways to pressure you. Pay us to get your systems back online, and pay us so we don't leak all your secrets to the entire world. And this is where the stakes get incredibly high. When a hospital's systems go down because of ransomware, surgeries get canceled. When a local government gets hit, 911 services can be disrupted. It's like the slide says. Ransomware has evolved from being a data problem into a full-blown public safety issue. So, how do attackers even get in to launch something like ransomware? Well, often it's through a software vulnerability. And it's really important to know the difference between 2 key terms here. A standard vulnerability exploit that takes advantage of a known flaw. Think of it like a broken lock on a door that everyone knows about. The fix, a new lock, is available, it just hasn't been installed. But a zero-day attack, that's a whole different beast. That exploits a flaw that nobody knows about yet, not even the company that made the software. There is no fix available, which makes it an incredibly powerful and dangerous weapon. And that brings us right back to the policy connection. Protecting systems requires being proactive. It means having a clear, enforceable policy for patch management. You gotta fix those known broken locks. It means demanding secure coding practices from your vendors. And maybe most importantly, it means having a well-rehearsed incident response plan before an attack ever happens. All right, now let's zoom out, because no organization is an island, right? We all operate inside this massive, interconnected digital ecosystem of partners, suppliers, and customers. And an attack on just one link in that chain can quickly become a crisis for everyone. This is the idea behind a supply chain attack. I mean, why bother trying to hack 1,000 different companies one by one when you can just hack the one piece of software that they all trust and use? By compromising a single trusted vendor, an attacker can push their malicious code out to every single customer downstream. One attack, thousands of victims. It's brutally efficient. The governance takeaway here is a big one. Your organization's security is no longer just about what you control inside your own walls. It is fundamentally tied to the security of your weakest supplier. And that reality demands strong vendor risk management. It means writing security requirements into your contracts, and it means pushing for better shared standards across your entire industry. And tangled up in this ecosystem, you also find state-sponsored operations. This is where nations use cyber capabilities not just for money, but as tools of espionage, foreign policy, and pure geopolitical competition. These attacks are usually sophisticated, they're incredibly persistent, and they completely blur the line between enterprise security and national security. Okay, so we've looked at the types of threats, but what actually happens when one of them lands? In this last section, let's connect these threats to the real, tangible consequences for an organization. Why does all of this matter? Well, when a cyber incident happens, the damage usually falls into a few key areas. You've got the immediate financial loss from fraud or just the cost of recovery. You've got the chaos of service disruption. Then come the legal headaches and regulatory fines, the long-term damage to your reputation, and in some cases, you're looking at serious national security implications. This table here really makes that connection crystal clear. That business email compromise we talked about, its main impact is direct financial loss. Ransomware, that's all about causing massive service disruption and downtime. A big data breach, that kicks off a firestorm of legal, regulatory, and reputational damage. And a sophisticated supply chain attack, as we saw, can easily become a strategic national security event. But if there's one thing to take away from this section, it's this. These impacts are never isolated. A ransomware attack isn't just a service disruption. It's also a financial crisis, a legal nightmare, and a PR disaster all rolled into one. A single incident triggers this complex, cascading failure that ripples across the entire organization. And that leaves us with one final big question to think about. As we see artificial intelligence making attacks faster, smarter, and more scalable, and as AI-powered deepfakes make impersonations almost perfect, where does our greatest vulnerability truly lie? Is the biggest future threat a technological one that we can engineer a solution for, or is it, as it has always been, fundamentally human?